you. I thought it had to be close to that. I'm going to try to keep up with that.
Do you have how many you're going to do? You know the number?
Yeah, 9.
9 lessons.
That should take me somewhere around Thanksgiving. Then we'll break for the holidays and then come back after the first of the year or something with a new lesson. We'll come back with something new. Okay. Ecclesiastes. What does that mean? Well, Ecclesiastes was known as the preacher.
Yeah, but it's a Greek word.
Yeah, it's a Greek word. See, we get the word church from it.
Yeah, we get church.
Church idea. Ecclesiastes. Okay, well there's your home assignment. Next time you come in, figure out what Ecclesiastes mean, okay? Hey, how's your eye doing?
It's good.
Yeah.
Still got stitches, but that's it.
I see, yeah. Well, good. Oh, well, that's good. That's good. Do you have ministry? Do you have an opportunity to do any kind of ministry with it?
Not really.
Okay, okay.
But I did. I mean, there wasn't many. There was one nurse that was there.
Uh-huh.
They were so just, you know.
Yeah, I know. Well, sometimes it don't work out, but other times.
But there was. I mean, we did a lot of praying.
Yeah.
Hey, there was a lady in front of me, like beside us.
Yeah, yeah,
Hers was absolutely awful. So.
yeah.
My attention turned to praying for her. So
Yes.
Any ministry was like kind of to me, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. You're right.
She had a 6-hour procedure, the one that was in front of her.
Yeah,
Supposed to be an hour, she was there 6.
yeah. Well, that's good.
I don't know.
Well, that's good. That's good.
That was something.
Yeah, that was good.
Yeah, yeah. Well, see, I like the idea. I just like the idea that you look for it. Sometimes it's there and sometimes it isn't. Sometimes it's different than you might have thought it would be. But, you know, all things work together for good, and you look for maybe that good can be shared or spread, say. So you always look for it. I like the idea that you were looking for it. Okay, Ecclesiastes 2. Yeah, and Ecclesiastes is a Greek word. It comes from what translation? Septuagint. That's the Greek translation of the Old Testament. The Hebrews would have called it the preacher, wouldn't they? Verse 1. See, Ecclesiastes 1:1, the preacher. 18, verse 18. Thus I hated all the... Oh, boy, that starts out good, doesn't it? Yeah. Thus I hated all the fruit of my labor for which I had labored under the sun. You know, during this hurricane down in Florida, the governor used this expression, I don't know how many times, but a lot. Under the sun. Under the sun.
You know why, don't you? What's the name of Florida?
Under the sun. I don't know. Well, yeah, but under the sun? I mean, that's a biblical concept. When people say that, now they may have gotten it, but it's a biblical concept. They may have gotten it passed down to them by somebody, but it's a biblical concept because it comes from Ecclesiastes, under the sun. But anyhow, and they used it here. And who knows whether he will be a wise man or a fool? Thus I hated all the fruit of my labor, which I had labored under the sun. For I must leave it to a man who will come after me. And who knows whether this man would be wise or a fool? Yet he will have control over all the fruit of my labor for which I have labored by actively, wisely under the sun. This is vanity. Therefore I completely despaired of all the fruit of my labor for which I had labored under the sun. When there is a man who has labored with wisdom, knowledge, and skill, and then gives his legacy to one who has not labored with them, this too is vanity and a great evil. For what does a man get in all of his labor and is in his striving with or chasing with which he labors under the sun? Because all of his days his task is painful and grievous. Even at night his mind does not rest. This too is vanity. So here's what I conclude, he said. There's nothing better for a man than to eat and drink and tell himself his labor was good. This also I have seen, that this is from the hand of God. For who can eat and who can enjoy without God? For to a person who is good in his sight, God's sight, he has given wisdom and knowledge and joy. While to the sinner, he who is without God, he has given the task of gathering, collecting, so that he may give to one who is good in God's sight. This too is vanity and chasing the wind. So it's kind of interesting how he writes this. I want to focus on the legacy. The legacy of labor, which he calls the legacy of life. What can I leave my legacy? That's what he's concerned about, his legacy. See where we pick that up? In verse 21. He set the whole thing up in verses 18, 19, and 20 and said, I completely despaired. When there is a man who has labored with wisdom, knowledge, and skill, then he gives his legacy to one who has not labored with them. This too is vanity and is great evil. Yeah. So we're going to talk about that today. His legacy of labor, his legacy of life. When I looked at this, I saw not 4 homiletical points, but I saw 3. I don't know where 4 came from. Guess I better change that one to 3. 3 homiletical points. In other words, all these points have something in common, and you'll see they're first letter words like hatred, heirs in hand. See that? Or leave, legacy, and leaving. So in verses 18 and 20, what caught my attention was that he hated the labor of his fruit, the fruit of his labor, because he had to leave it to somebody, and if you left it to somebody wise, that would be good. If you left it to fools, that would be vanity. So he's concerned about that. I guess probably everybody does when they look at the family and say, who let's all go to? You probably immediately go, well, as long as they don't go to Joe and Bob and Zara, because but so he's concerned about what a lot of people are, if they have anything to leave, right? So he hated the fruit of his labor, and that caught my attention because, if you got labor, if you got a job and the job is doing you well, you ought to be happy with it. And he goes on to say he was, but what he wasn't happy about was the idea of leaving it to somebody. Who am I going to leave this to? I've amassed a great fortune by the grace of God, out of wisdom, knowledge, and skill. And now who am I going to leave it to? Right? You wouldn't have thought that would have been that tough a question in the Hebrew scheme of things to the firstborn, would it? I mean, they set that whole idea up with firstborn. I think he's probably thinking, I don't know, but I'm probably thinking that I got more than One person. You know what I mean? What am I going to do? You know, David had Nathan, he had Solomon, right? And he had but the largest share is always the Hebrews settled this. They had a rite of passage with all this. You give the majority of it to the firstborn, and then you split the rest up amongst the rest. That's how that thing ran in Hebrew. The firstborn always carried the bulk of it, and then that was split up. Now, I don't know why he's struggling with this. Because
He was the richest man in the world.
well, that's it. You know how much is enough for somebody. He finally comes to a conclusion about it, didn't he? In verses 24, 25, 26. He came to a conclusion about it. But in verses 21, 22, what caught my attention was the idea of heirs. Who am I going to leave this to? And how am I going to leave it? That won't run their lives. You know, people that haven't earned their money and don't have an appreciation for it, when they all of a sudden get a pile of money, like maybe they win the lottery or something, it just ruins their life. Because they haven't grown with their labor for wealth. They haven't grown with it. Now, he's concerned about his family that way. He said, I've got it, but what am I going to do with them? So he struggles with that. I guess you don't have anything. There's probably a struggle with that, as well as if you got too much. I don't know. I've never been on the too much part, so I don't know. But he has been, and he's concerned about it. And then in verses 24, 25, he comes back to the hand of God that gave it anyhow, right? He comes back to God. See, trying to do this without God is just futile. If you do it with God, you go like, okay, look it, I'm going to do the best I can with it, and then I'm going to leave it with God to do it. I just do it this way or that way. So I love the fact that he came back to the hand of God in verses 24, 25, and 26. I'm glad and he really gets all over God on this part, doesn't he? He go like, well, look, the bottom line is God gave it to me. It's up to him to decide that. I'll do the best I can with it, and then he can do with the rest, right? And that's kind of what he concluded. Listen, it's God's money. He's not going to give it to fools. I might give it. He was concerned about. I might give it to fools, but God's not going to give it to fools. And if God gave me this money and I'm going to give it the best I know how, then he's going to have to take care of it on how it's distributed in the end. The money goes back to God in the end, no matter how I divide it up. And that was his conclusion. Watch this. There's nothing better for a man than eat and drink and tell himself his labor was good. This too I have seen from the hand of God. For who can eat and who can drink and enjoy without God? For to the man who is good in God's sight, he has given wisdom, knowledge, and joy, while to the sinner he has given the task of gaining, collecting, so that he may give to one who is good in God's sight. See? In the end, it comes from the hand of God. It goes back to the hand of God. In the end, even how I distribute it to the best of my ability, how that goes, God's going to get it back in the right hands. He's going to either change the hands that's holding the money, or he's going to take the money from it and give it to the people that know how to manage it, because it's God's money in the end. Note the word labor, which is the word amel. Let's see if we can show you that to you. Let me take another look at it. It's got an A in the front and an E, right? Yeah. That's the way it looks in the Hebrew, reading this way. That's an A, that's a silent. That thing that looks like a Y is silent. So it starts with an A, M-E-L, amel. That's the word for labor in this text. Labor. And watch, it's used 11 times. If you count the word labor You should. If I tell you it's 11, you should always count it, because you never know. But I think it was used 11 times. It's the word that's used the most is labor. And I won't ask you to count it, but you one day can go through and count it. But it dominates the subject, doesn't it? It's just, if your eyes just flash through and say labor, 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 right? 18. In verse 18, it's used twice. In verse 19, it's used twice. It's used in 20. It's used twice in 21. It's used in 22. It's used in 24. Right? That's just the ones. In 22, it's used twice. So I just glancing through and just looking for you look for words that are being repeated, right? You're always looking for words that are being repeated. So this whole deal is about his labor. And he tells you, uses it and tells you 11 things about it. Right? He says labor and then tells you something. He says labor and then tells you something. You know, if I ask you about your work, that's about labor. You can tell me about your work, couldn't you? You tell me this. Here's the good parts of it. Here's the down parts of it. This is what I really like about it. This is what I really don't like about it. Yeah. So it dominates our subject. The word legacy. Let me show you that word. I put it on your paper. I'm just showing you how it looks in the Greek language. Cheleq. Cheleq. See it on your paper? All right. That's the way it looks in the Hebrew language. Just to show it to you. When you look at it in English, you go, whoa. But that's the way it looks in Hebrew. Just three little letters with vowels under it. He used the word legacy. It means he's worried about his prosperity to his posterity. Agreed? He's worried about what he's gathered and accumulated by the grace of God and who he's going to leave it to in his family. And he talks about it. When there is a man who has labored wisdom, knowledge, and skill, then he gives his legacy to the one who has not labored with them. This is vague and could be great danger, a great evil. It's vanity, and it could be great evil. And you can see it. And sometimes people get what they haven't earned; they have no appreciation for it, and it's you might as well just walk out the door and throw it. Give it to the wind. Maybe somebody find it that needed it. So, I mean, we all know about this kind of experience. So let's talk about 5 things today about the legacy of life. I tell you, at some time, everybody thinks about it. Everybody thinks about it. Even if you don't have a lot to give, you still think about it. I've never known anybody that I've been personally connected with that didn't think about it at some point in their life. My grandfather thought about it, and just everybody. I mean, they may not have a lot, but they still think about it. They think about things like pictures and hand-me-downs, and they think about all kinds of this stuff. Well, anyhow. So you don't have to have a whole lot to think about it. I mean, everybody. You don't have to have a whole lot to think about. You have a legacy. Everybody's got one. With my mother didn't have a lot of quote money, but when I said to her, and she was critically ill, because my mother never liked to talk about dying. I said, well, you know, is there anything, Mother, that you want anybody? Do you have anything you want to go with? Well, my goodness, she got a pencil and paper and she wrote down. I went like, I would have never thought of that stuff. You know what I mean? I would have, and I was the one that was going to have to do all this. I would have never thought. I was so glad I did that. Then I started doing that with everybody. I did it through my pastoral counseling with people. I did it with everybody dying in my family. I always went through this routine with them. I was always amazed what they wanted people to have that were only significant between them and another person. And I mean, you might think I don't have anything to leave, and you might be really wrong about it. If you do have anything, you would like make sure that certain things are passed. I mean, there were certain things that she wanted my sister to have. There were certain things she wanted my sister's children to have. There were certain things she wanted my children to have. Yeah, there were certain things she wanted me to have. Right? She left Billy. She wanted Billy to have her record player. It was one of these great big things. You remember those? It had a radio and you could put your... And by the time she died, that was an antique. And and she wanted him to have the records that went with it. And so when I was going over that, I said, Billy, here's what Mother left you. Billy went, what? She wanted you to have that, Billy. Huh. Billy still has it. He wouldn't give that up for anything. And every once in a while, he goes down there and puts an old record on, you know. Is one of those that you could run a 45 by putting a spindle down over it, and you could run a 45, or you could take it off and run a big one, a 78 or whatever it was. And every once in a while, he'll get that melancholiness, and he'll go down there and he'll put a record on and sit there and listen to it. So who knew? Who knew? Who knows? Point number 1, Solomon bemoaned, I hate, he said. He bemoaned leaving the fruit of his labor to ungrateful posterity, children. Thus I hated all the fruit of my labor, for which I labored under the sun. What was he hating about? What am I going to, who am I going to leave it to? For I must leave it to the man who will come after me. In verse 19 he said, and who knows whether he will be a wise man or a fool, yet he will have control over all the fruit of my labor for which I've labored by acting wisely under the sun. This would be vanity. For him it would be vanity, wouldn't it? But in the hands of God it would be. And he finally come to that conclusion in the end. Note how Solomon concluded his feelings when he, or concluded about his feelings in verse 20 when he said, therefore I've become completely despaired. Since I'm showing you Hebrew words, it's kind of an interesting word. And I think it has, that's a verb, so it looks like that. Those are both A's in Hebrew. But that's a S-A-B-A-B. It's a word. I mean, just looking at it, it would make you perplexed, wouldn't it? Therefore, I completely, that's a Cal Perfect, I completely despaired. I completely despaired. And then he puts this, well, anyhow, he puts another word up there. I just don't want to turn around and put it up there. The way of thinking left Solomon with a feeling of hopelessness towards leaving his legacy of life with his posterity, his children. Go to Job. We're right there. Back up a little bit and go to Job. Job opens this wisdom literature up. Let's just back up. You have to back up a pretty good place. To Job, the sixth chapter, I said we need to read it. let's say I just picked up 25 and 26. Your Bible will pick it up at 24. Teach me and I will be silent. Show me how I have erred. How painful are honest words, but what does your argument prove? Do you intend to reprove my words with the words of one in despair? There's our word. Do you intend to reprove my words when the words of one in despair belong to the wind? Kind of interesting. Job kind of took a look at that idea of chasing the wind business. Oh. Let me show you something. I'm going to have to write this other one down. Let's say it's a Y, XW. Let me see what it is, a verb, yep. This is a word, Y-A-A-S-H, and actually, that's the word for despair, and the other word is completely. I just noticed that on my paper. Completely is sabab, S-A-B-A-B. It's a cal perfect, and the word despair is yatsa. It's a PL infinitive. And this is the word for despair in verse 26 is yasa. It's the same word, is my point. It's the same word, despair. Now, he shouldn't go there, should he? Shouldn't go there. All right? So let me tell you how he got there, so we don't do this. Let me show you how he got there. He made a false assumption, made a false interpretation that led to a false expectation, that led to a false application. You got to be careful because that's a code. A false assumption will lead you to a false interpretation, which will lead to a false expectation that will lead to a false application. You understand? Now he brought himself around, didn't he? I hated this because for this reason. I hated it for this reason, right? My legacy. Who am I going to leave it at? Well, he finally come around to understand it's not yours anyhow. See, he came back to the hand of God. Where did I get this from? I didn't get it because I was this smart and everything. I was smart enough to get it from the hand of God. It is still in the hand of God. It'll always remain in the hand of God. It's his. It was on loan with me. This is not mine. That's a great conclusion. He got into despair over something that was a non-issue. Do you understand it? And he tells you that. It's his testimony. He's telling you, don't do this. Keep God engaged in your life as you go along. It's all about the hand of God. You know, there's that song, Put Your Hand in the Hand, right? That's what his message is. Keep your hand in the hand of God so you don't get off into some craziness like I did. Because in the end, I got it from God. God still has it. He just put it on loan with me. Somehow I got the idea that it was mine. And the truth is, it is not. If it was mine, I could take it with me. But it's God's and I can't take it with me, right? Naked I came and naked I will return, right? That's Job 1:21. So, point number 2, Solomon's answer to despair regarding his legacy of life is stated in the 2nd chapter, verse 24, when he comes around again. He comes off from this false assumption that has led him down into a rabbit hole where there's no rabbits. He says there's nothing better for a man to eat, drink, and tell himself his labor is good. Why? It came from the hand of God. This also I have seen, that it is from the hand of God. But I got crazy in my head thinking that it was mine and that I was responsible for it. Well, if it's in your hand, you are, but when it's not in your hand, it's not. That's what his conclusion was. Was it not? Yes, while God puts it in your hands, you're responsible for it. But when he takes it out of your hands, you're not responsible for it. He's responsible for it, right? How about that? And he's still responsible for it, even if you go like, well, I might have made a bad decision by leaving it with so-and-so. You did the best you could with it, right? You took it out of your hands, put it in his, made a choice, made a decision. It's up to God now to make sure that his money gets in the right hands, right? Yeah, don't ever forget that. Don't second guess yourself. Go in there, do what you think you got to do with your legacy, what you want to leave out behind. Just take everybody in consideration, because you may be surprised what some people would like and not. And you know, my mother's choices on all the things she wanted to give to the people, they all liked. And if they didn't at first, they liked it in a little bit. Like Billy at first went, I don't know why she would give me that. And I went, oh, Billy, I don't know. Look, it's big. You know, now we're down into little toys that can do anything, right? And he's got this great big thing, which we used to have. It used to be furniture, didn't it? It's no longer furniture, see? You little thing in your ear or something, and you got the whole world. So, but I was at lunch with him here not the other day, and I said, whatever happened to mothers? Because I'm thinking that thing might be worth some money by now, right? Who knows? You know, antique stuff, especially with these albums. I mean, they were right out of the 40s, and maybe further back than that with Mother. He said, "Oh, I got it down. I go listen to it every once in a while." I went, I would give that thing up. I said, "Who are you going to leave it to?" He said, "Nobody in my family want it." I said, "Listen, it's probably worth something right now. What do I know?" But, you know, Solomon says, you don't have to worry about it. Huh? God put it in your hands. You do with it what you want to do with it, because God will put it in the hands he wants it. Who would even know about that stuff? Yeah. The smartest thing I ever did was ask my mother about that, because I thought, my mother didn't have anything to leave. She had a whole lot of stuff to leave. It might have been just a simple little ring or something. But she said, I want that. And I would give it to them. They go, oh, I've always wanted that ring. And I went, who even knew? Solomon's answer to despair was leave it in the hands of God. Isn't that simple? You know, instead of getting all wound up and tight and, oh, I can't sleep at night, what am I going to do? Just put it in the hands of God and go to sleep. Huh? Isn't that easy enough? Just put it back in the hands of God. Go to bed, take it easy. Hey, we didn't have prayer tonight. How come, Pam, you didn't let me start without having prayer? Make sure we have it afterwards, okay? Okay. That's your assignment. I'm looking at her and I went, I haven't prayed. Because I remember she came up and we talked about some of this stuff, didn't we? I don't know. I still know who I am, so I'm okay. A couple more years, I won't know who I am, and then you take me home. Take me home. Solomon's concern of his legacy of life left to his posterity was correctly directed to the Word of God. In Proverbs 20:21, an inheritance hurriedly gained at the beginning will not be blessed at the end. That's what he's worried about, isn't it? they don't know what it is to earn a buck. And I'm going to leave them a bunch of bucks. It's driving crazy with it. And the truth of the matter is, you do the best you can. What do you do? Put it in the hands of God. That's who put it in your hand. Put it back in his hands. This is one I've always lived by. Proverbs 13:22. A good man leaves an inheritance for his children's children. I thought, Lord, how could I ever do that? I don't make enough money to come out of an orchard. So, how would I ever get my children's children? So I did something. I jumped ahead of it. Because I don't know where I'd be time to get down there to my children's children. What would be the best thing that I could do for them to help them in their life? And so every child, grandchild, and every grandchild I had, I set up an educational fund. My wife and I. Every one of them. What you don't realize, if you have a good finance guy like Ed Jones, is how much a little bit of money can earn over a 20-year period because of compound interest. Compound interest. So and we did that. Every time they graduated from high school, I did it again. This time they had to meet with Ed. And we did it again. With this in mind, if you don't need this to go to college, this is a college fund or a future fund. This is not to go out and buy a car or something like that. This is not what it's for. It's to put you in a different place in your life, income-wise, into a smart place. So I did it again when they graduated from high school. I did it again with Ed sitting down and teaching. If you will take that money, if you never add another penny to it, when you retire at 65, this is the amount of money this is going to accumulate for you. I'm telling you, it was a whopper. And it was a small investment on the front side. A small investment. It wasn't a big investment. Because I wanted to be able to manage that way. Everything else I accumulate, I'll give to my kids. But I was concerned about my children's children. And how could I influence their life about money and make it a positive thing? And this was the verse that got me. This is a verse, when I studied this several years ago, my kids were small, and I read that, and I went like, wow, I don't have any of that. And I went, well, wait a minute. You might be able to do with a lot if you plan ahead. And so I talked with Ed, and we started that system in my family. I couldn't do it. I'm telling my kids, you better be smart enough to get a scholarship. I got a place for you to live, but boy, you're going to have to earn some money. And they all did. They all did that. That's how I got my education. Nobody gave me my education. I earned it. I earned it and worked for it and got it. But I felt I could leave something to my kids that I felt would be important for them. When I was in school, they used to tell us all the time. Now, I was a farm boy, but the teacher would always say, if you don't graduate from high school, here's what your future is going to be financially, right? And if you get a skill job, plumber, electrician, that type, here's what your money's going to be. Well, when I saw what those guys made compared to the average guy that gets a college education, those guys were doing really good. And I thought, well, if I don't go to college, and I always wanted to go to college, but if I don't go to college, I'm going to pick me up. I'm definitely going to put me up a skilled career. So a lot of my buddies, they went skill, and they did really well in life. I went education because I just wanted that. I wanted to have an education. Nobody in my family had an education. I wanted to be the first one to have one. I wanted to have one, and I was told, well, you're going to have to earn it then, and I did. I scholarshiped my way through. But I'm just telling you that sticks in my head when I think that way, and so I wanted to do something within my family structure that would push them in that way, and then they can decide how they want to do with it. I mean, it wouldn't matter to me if they want to start a career out there and do that. That's all right with me. But I wanted to push them in that direction. So, that's just the way my family pushed me. Well, anyhow, point number 3. Solomon was keenly aware of the danger of leaving a legacy of fortune to those who had not labored with him in acquiring it. I know my grandfather was really disappointed because all the men in the family left the farm. Now, a lot of them went into, I had one uncle that left the farm, he became a very good restaurant guy. I had 2 uncles that got drafted. They went into skilled labor jobs, did really well. But my grandfather, I was the Lone Ranger. And my grandfather would just do, I was going to do it. And I came home in the 6th grade and said, I want to go to college. And my grandfather went, oh, Brian, we can't send you to college. I thought maybe you want to be a farmer. And I went, mm-mm. I knew as a little kid I didn't want to be a farmer. But I didn't want to be a farmer. You didn't like something, I want to do it. Right? I don't want to do that. Solomon understood that without God engaged in the labor process of God's divine wisdom and skill, the results would be vanity and maybe great evil. What you think you might be doing good for somebody may not turn out that way. That's the reason when every kid graduated from high school, I brought Ed and we sat him down and talked about another possibility. If you're going to go to college, just as if you're not going to college, hold on to that and reinvest. Because if you go to college, you're investing in yourself. If not, reinvest. Right? Reinvest. You always want, when you sleep, your money should work. When you sleep, your money should work for you. I don't care how much it is, but that's a rich man. I don't care how much money it is. You just need to know that. And that's a biblical proposition. Better to be poor with God than rich without Him, right? You remember the story of Luke 16, the rich man and Lazarus? Huh? The rich man died. He was buried. In Hades, he lifted up his eyes, being in torment. And he saw Abraham afar off, with Lazarus in his bosom. He cried out and said, hey, Father Abraham, have mercy on me, and send Lazarus so he may dip the tip of his finger in water and cool off my tongue. There's a whole lot of stuff there that kind of intrigues me. He said, because I'm in agony in this flame. When you read the story, there's no second chances for him, right? If you read the story. And he's concerned about his brothers because they die. They don't get another chance. They don't get another shot at this thing. You ought to read that passage. That's really good. And here's the thing. He was over on one side of the gulf between the place of torment and the place of paradise, and he couldn't cross over. Could not cross over. No crossing over. That decision's over. If it wasn't, he wouldn't have stayed there a minute, let alone a day. He'd been gone. Solomon gave his interpretation of living under Adamic curse of life. Under the Adamic curse of work, Do you know what's interesting in the Hebrew about this? In Genesis 3:16, Eve is a curse is placed upon her from her eating from the tree. You know what it was? Pain in labor. The same word is used with Adam when he's told there's going to be labor pain. Same identical word. I didn't put the word on your paper, but I did put the passage. And for what that meant for him was that all labor has toil, thorns, thistles, tiresome, all the days of your life. All the days of your life. Now listen, whether you're a fine boy or not, you know about thorns and thistles. Thorns and thistles, that's the part that just gets you every day and every week, the thorn and thistles. But listen, your labor is supposed to be tiresome. You got to deal with thorns and thistles. You should be tired at the end of the day. And you ought to come to Bible study at night. No. Listen, my hat's off to you, because I know you put in some labor. It's hot, tiresome, and grievous-some. But it's a job, isn't it? It's a job. What does a man get in all of his labor and his striving with which he labors under the sun? Because all of his days is painful and grievous. Even at night, he can't shut it down. Even at night, he can't shut it down. We've all been there, haven't we? Oh, bye. We've all been there. This too is vanity. Why? You know what you should do with it? And it's tough to do it. Listen, I know.
Give it to God and go to sleep.
Right? Put it in the hands of God. And He'll have it in the morning. And you'll have a fresh new look. A fresh new look tomorrow. But sometimes it's hard to turn that mind off. Sometimes it's hard to shut it down. I just tell the Lord to shut it down. I said, Lord, I don't have enough. I'm turning to the Holy Spirit of God. And I need to have you just turn it down. Turn it off. It will help you to not rev your engines up before you go to bed. Don't watch a game that's a big game for you.
Yeah.
Don't watch it. If so, then stay up till you get tired enough to go to bed, because it revs your engine up. Don't eat stuff that revs your engine up. Don't do that stuff. Put on some kickback music or find another way. You have to put your mind into relaxing. And that helps you. It helps you. You don't need a sleeping pill. You got God. Listen, He's the same God at night as He is in the daytime. It's you that's sleeping. Well, maybe. But listen, you gotta learn to just shut that thing off. And sometimes you have to bring yourself down after a day. You have to bring yourself down after a big day. I mean, your day could be just lights out. I mean, the best day I've ever had in my life, and you can't go to sleep at night because you're just up. You're just up. I don't know. I'm just talking. Maybe you know, maybe you don't. This is why we need to engage God in every aspect of our daily life decisions, both in planning and performing. Engage God. That's His point, isn't it? His point in this whole book is stay engaged with God. Monday, stay engaged with God. Tuesday, stay engaged with God. Oh, I got a weekend. Stay engaged with God. That's His point. Solomon, do you realize Solomon wrote some of the Proverbs? If you have a good study Bible, it'll tell you which ones he wrote. One of the ones, if you have a good study Bible, it'll tell you in the introduction. One that he wrote was Proverbs 16:16. So when I'm with Solomon, I try to go back and see what he wrote, what he studied, and how come you're not doing that? You see what I mean? And Proverbs 16:16 is one of those that he wrote. How much better is it to get wisdom than gold? And to get understanding is to be chosen above silver. Now, he used a value system, didn't he? Isn't it interesting? Gold has always been bigger than silver. It still is, isn't it? But he used a value system to talk about that. How much better to get wisdom than gold, or to get understanding, the application of that wisdom in your life. How important it is to have the Word of God to get the understanding, so you got the wisdom. Wisdom is gold, understanding is silver. They're both valuable. In Ecclesiastes, as he summarized our lesson tonight, in Ecclesiastes 2, 24 through 26, Solomon gave a two-part conclusion regarding life legacies. He gave two-part. So I broke them down in two parts because I didn't want you to miss it. In the first part of his conclusion, two-part conclusion, there's nothing better. This is one of these phrases he likes. You'll hear him do this. There's nothing better. Huh? So we all have those. Every morning, I go out and have a cup of coffee and breakfast. I go through my notes. I look at it because I've learned that my creative side of my life is really good in the morning. Get up early and hit it. That cup of coffee and that little old sandwich or whatever I have with it, I can percolate like crazy. Then about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I'm like the chickens. I'm headed for the roost. And I can do things that, now I can put my creative side in some kind of order. I don't have to think about it. I've laid it out. And now I can play with it a little bit, put it in some kind of form and that. My creative side is in the morning. And so I try to take advantage of that. I am really good in the morning with that. And so I've learned to be a morning person. I had a good friend, Bill Dennis. Some of you know Bill. Bill was a good friend. Bill got up with a chicken and went to bed with him. And he said, I just do so much better in the creative side of my life in the business world. I mean, I can sit down, buy myself a cup of coffee, and I go over that, and I just click. And then in the evenings, I don't do that well. I mean, that's, if I'm looking for new business, that's what I do, go out and have dinner, push for new business or something. I don't do my creative. And so I thought, I wonder, well, isn't that interesting? Because I had great respect for him. And I started doing that because I used to like to sleep in the morning, stay up at night. And then I changed that around. Of course, having kids help you with that, but there's nothing better for a man than to eat and drink and tell himself that his labor is good. Huh? No sense not. You know why it's good? Why is your labor good? It's good every day. Because the hands of God. Favor the hands of God. I mean, and listen, you need to see it all the time. You see it once in a while and you go like, whoa, wow. I mean, God just showed up and showed out on me today. And I know he does that, and that's a good thing. But you need to see it, even in the tough times of your day, when you go like, when you think, Jesus, it just seems like everything went wrong today for me. I backed up the car and ran over a cat, and, one thing after another. As long as it wasn't a kid, you're all right. But listen, everything is good, isn't it? With God, with God. That's it, buddy. Above the dirt. Yep. It's nothing better for a man to eat and drink, tell him his labor is good. This also I've seen, that is from the hand of God. Good comes from the hand of God, because God is good. For who can eat and who can have enjoyment without God? That's a capital H. Then the second thing he wants you to get. For to a person who is good in his sight, he has given wisdom, knowledge, and joy. In whose sight? In God's sight. A person who is good in God's sight. Huh? And there's a lot in the Bible about that. the Bible talks a lot about how do I know what's good in his sight, Ron? He talks a lot about it. Just look for good and sight in your concordance business, and you'll get a lot of information. I'll come back one day and give it to you. He has given wisdom, knowledge, and joy, while to the sinner he's given the task of gathering, collecting, because that's part of it, isn't it? Adamic curse. All right? So don't be chasing the wind, people. Don't be chasing the wind. Don't chase the wind. Chase God, but don't chase the wind. All right, let's have prayer. Michelle is doing better, right?